What up? Yo. Welcome back to Coffee with Riley. This is season 2, episode 2. It's been it's been a little bit. I know I say this like getting in the habit of putting so much time in between the episodes that every new episode I'm like, oh yeah, it's been a little bit. um, I'm I'm working towards making this a habitual a habit. So I really want to make this into something. It took me a while to understand what the hell it was I was doing, mostly because, like Gary Vee says, I was listening to other people, and some people didn't think that Coffee with Riley was such a good idea. So I guess I took their opinions and just held them for my own. So basically, the reason I came on right now is because I was drinking my coffee. I was eating a gluten-free cookie, and I realized that I was using my my coffee to wash it down, and I drank half my coffee without without even enjoying it. And so before I get into the real nuts and bolts of this episode, shout out to Cold Brew Coffee. Cold Brew Coffee is a brand that I just made up that really is, I would say, more of a homegrown recipe, right? So basically what you do is you take coffee and you put it inside a jug of water, put it inside a coffee filter, then you take that coffee filter, put it inside a jug of water, take that jug of water, sit it in the fridge for 2 days, and what you get is coffee, but cold brewed. And man, it's amazing. It's changed my life since I discovered it. I became a whole new person. I lost 30 pounds, and no, that's I was gonna go deeper, but I figured somebody might think I was being serious. So I got a lot on my mind, and I would like to process through a little bit of it. Today's date, for the record, is April 4th, 2020, and 4/4/20, which is pretty cool. 4/20, 4/4/20, 4/20, and so basically, because it's 4/20, we're gonna take a hit. And for those of you watching that think smoking weed on a podcast is for terrible people to do, I have my medical marijuana card. So in reality, I was just taking my medicine. So it's been a while. There's been a lot going on in the world. We're in the middle of this pandemic. A lot of people don't think it's a pandemic. A lot of people are scared that it's the end of the world. A lot of people think we're sliding into a recession. There's a tendency to look towards the past and predict the future based off of what we think we know. And I think a lot of us do it. But in reality, we don't really know where we're going. I know a lot of people watching right now, probably just lost their jobs. Luckily for me, I quit my job before I could get fired 2 years ago, before I could get laid off, because I kind of saw this coming. I don't want to say I predicted anything. I just recognize that our economy was kind of built on nothing, and basically most companies are getting rich by selling imported Chinese goods, and that in and of itself as a business model creates a shaky economy. You know what I mean? But I don't want to get too deep into that because that's neither here nor there. Basically, what I want to talk about is why it's so hard to stay focused. Or excuse me, I don't want to talk about why it's so hard. I want to talk about how to stay focused during stressful times, right? And so we can talk about why it's so hard, but the reality is that it's it's actually very easy to explain why it's so hard. And it really just has to do with where you're directing your focus, and what you're listening to, right? So most people, and I do this, so I'm going to categorize myself as most people on this one. Most people, as soon as they wake up in the morning, they bring some type of outside perspective into their head. And typically people do this by turning on the radio. Some people have their alarm clocks set to like a certain local radio station. A lot of times people have their alarm clock set to the news. Some people have their alarm clock set to music, right? But basically what happens is as soon as you wake up in the morning, next to a lot of times it's even before your first thought, somebody else's thoughts are getting in your head. And there's multiple levels that we could have this conversation at, but I think on the ground surface level is probably the easiest to approach this. And so if somebody else's thought is getting inside your head as soon as you wake up in the morning, basically what that does is that puts you in it presupposes you to be in a reactive state essentially for the rest of your day. And the reason is because instead of being proactive, and instead of responding to an inner dialogue, you're responding to an external dialogue. And the difference between being proactive and being reactive is when you start responding to an external dialogue instead of an internal dialogue. So if you're responding to an internal dialogue, then you're being proactive, right? If you're responding to an external dialogue, then you're being reactive. I would say that's very simple, and it's definitely not 100% true. You can find ways to dispute that on both sides of the argument, but basically that's what we can boil it down to, right? So for the sake of explanation, and so if the way you're approaching your life is every single day you wake up and you're responding to some type of external thing, then it's going to put you in a perpetual state of response at the basic level, right? So whether that's a good thing, whether you perceive it as a good thing or a bad thing, is a little bit beyond this scope, but essentially you're responding always. So let's say you wake up and somebody hands you $100 bill, like you're going to respond to that, right? Or let's say you wake up and somebody tells you your mom dies, you're going to respond to that. Either way, you're still responding to it. And that's being reactive, right? So if you wake up and the first thing you do is go to Facebook, first thing you do is check your text messages, first thing you do is check your email, like I do, then that puts you in a perpetual state of response. And to go even deeper, it puts you in a state of expectation to be in a perpetual state of response. And so that state of expectation then leads you, I would say it triggers your reticular activating system to go and look for things to respond to. And this is not necessarily a bad way to approach life. I would say for the majority of people, for the majority of history, this was probably the right way to approach life, right? And for most animals approach life in this way. However, because we are human, right? Because we have this amazing potential for thought, right? We don't always have to respond in that way, right? So we don't have to. We have a choice. Let's put it that way. Most animals, when they're given a choice, they don't know what to do with that choice. And to expect anything less from us is, kind of ridiculous. Because unless we're trained to understand how to choose, we're not going to know what to do when we're presented with a choice. And typically, what we don't realize, especially like fishes born in water don't realize it's wet, right? We don't realize that we've always had that choice. And actually, some of us understand that we've had that choice. Others don't realize we have always had it. But there's a third group of people that know we have the choice, that have made the choice, but they've been told that that's the wrong choice, right? So they don't choose that way. And we're getting a little off topic, and I kind of want to bring it back. But essentially, what we're talking about is how to maintain your focus, okay? And when you are in a perpetual state of reactivity, when you're looking for things to respond to, technically you are focused. But the reality is that where your focus is external. And what I mean by that is you're no longer focused on your own issues. You're no longer focused on your own thought process. You're no longer focused on, your body's internal activities or anything like that. You're focused on things outside of you. And that essentially puts you on defense, right? And so reactivity, defense, however you want to look at it, like that's what you're doing, right? So you're constantly trying to respond appropriately. And because you're thinking of responding appropriately, you're already approaching it from a defensive perspective. And so the answer to this like unbreakable puzzle, unsolvable question, right, is that you shift your focus. And once you shift your focus, your whole paradigm changes. And so you would say, okay, well, if I'm not focusing on the bills I got to pay, if I'm not focusing on the job I got to get to, if I'm not focusing on the husband or wife or the kids that I have, or if I'm not focusing on the food that needs to be cooked, like or the exercise that needs to be done, like what is there to focus on? Like what are you talking about? What am I supposed to just focus on? Nothing? And I would argue that technically the answer is yes. You are supposed to focus on nothing. But the only reason I would say that is because from your perspective, shifting from an external focus to an internal focus would be like focusing on nothing, right? And I know this is getting a little kind of hairy, right? But basically, what you see when you close your eyes is nothing, right? Most people, when they close their eyes, don't see shit. They see black, right? Anyone who tells you anything different is probably lying to you. And I say probably because that's a secret. So that they're probably lying to you, right? But the thing is it gets to a point where you spend so much time with your eyes closed, or sometimes at certain times of the day, you can just find yourself there. When this idea of a theater in your mind starts to become a reality. And basically, your mind turns into a big projector, like a big TV. But before it does that, you see nothing. And so, from the outsider's perspective, you would be focusing on nothing, right? But eventually, what you realize after you focus on nothing is that your mind opens up and becomes a movie theater. And some people get stuck at that level, and they kind of just watch the movie for a little bit, and then they'll wake up, and that's a 10-minute meditation, right? Other people will try and look behind the screen, right? And that's when things start to open up, because you kind of realize that there's a little bit more to this movie projector that you see. And the deeper you go, the more you start to have your answers no longer find questions, right? Like the answers you had, the questions don't seem to be the right questions for the answers you had. And so like you don't even know enough to ask the right question to get the right answer. Like that's what you start realizing. And the thing is just that inkling of a perspective alone is enough to shatter one's reality. And that's why some people say I can't meditate. Um, but the thing is like, if you have your reality shattered, you can see it as a bad thing because the story that you are living is no longer a true story. But almost everybody would argue that's a good thing because you don't have to live a story anymore. Now you see the truth. And once you see the truth, you have a solid baseline to operate off of. And the biggest thing that I struggle with every day is being able to remember the truth that I've already seen. And this is why this is why I make it a point to try to meditate every day. I'm very close to being able to say I do it every day, but I'm not just gonna come out and lie and say I do it every day. I'm almost there. But the meditation is one way of understanding this certain thing, right? But the title of this talk was how to stay focused, you know what I mean, in times of stress. Hold on, my dog's here. What? Come on, go lay down. Come on. How to stay focused, right? And so it's not just keeping it. It's more than being able to see that screen, right? It's more than being able to sit down and shift your focus. It's a commitment, right? And it's a remembering, and it's a promise that one has to keep with themselves regularly. And a lot of people, me included, have lost a lot of credibility with themselves, and so they no longer believe in themselves, right? And when you lose this credibility, it makes it harder to make commitments because you let yourself off the hook because you're like, I don't have any fucking credibility, right? And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where you get to stay in mediocrity. And so the thing is like, our minds are wired to do this for us, right? They're wired to just basically keep us where we are, right? They don't want us doing anything, right? But we all know that our mind actively works against us, and so most people know that. We all know this. Most people don't understand why, right? Let me get some coffee real quick. I used really cheap coffee to make this, so it's, it looks really cheap. Tastes kind of cheap too, but it's still pretty good. So like I was saying, most people don't recognize that your mind. So there are some people, I don't want to say most people, there are some people whose mind does not actively work against them. There are some people that have learned how to train their mind. First, have learned that their mind is out of control. 2, have learned that they can train their mind. And 3, they've learned how to train their mind, right? And then they train their mind. So there are people that have trained their minds, okay? But most people have not. Most people haven't even recognized that their mind is a separate thing, right? And this is where things get kind of complicated. And if you're not there yet in life where you can accept that that might be a possibility, then you're never going to be able to train your mind, right? So it's like believing that your dog is a part of you, and because you believe your dog is a part of you, you're like, well, he's a part of me, so he's just going to act like this, right? And so it gets kind of complicated, and I'm not an expert on this, but here's what I do know. I do know that you can train your mind. I know that the Army has perfected training one's mind. I know that once you train your mind becomes a weapon. And I know that once you become once your mind becomes a weapon, you can use it as a leverage point for pretty much anything, right? So if you understand that, then you know, oh, this is how you find success. This is how you find happiness. This is how you can do whatever you want. This is how you can be whoever you want. This is how, like, life instantly opens up for anybody once they realize, one, that their mind is untrained, right? It's actively working against them, typically in most cases. Two, that they can train their mind. And three, they learn how to train it. Now, the cool thing is if you're looking to make money, like, for real, you can teach people how to train their mind. And if you do that, everybody's going to pay you money because it's a super powerful skill. Everybody wants a trained mind. They all know their mind is untrained. Nobody's willing to admit it. But it's that thing that we all deal with in their world. Like, yeah, I know, I would do that, but, you know, I've been thinking about doing that. You know, whatever it is. The reason you haven't done it is because your mind isn't trained. And, you know, there's a lot of personal development people that'll bring it back to stories. The story you tell yourself, right? Or you got to root out those childhood memories. Whatever it is. Basically, it's just an untrained mind. That's all it is. It's nothing more than that. It's nothing less than that. You can go through the process of, like, getting, you know, rooting out those memories and you know, dealing with that trauma, but that doesn't train your mind. And so you can be like 100% self-aware and, you know, conquered all your demons and dealt with all of your mommy issues and your daddy issues and your brother and your sister issues, but your mind will still be untrained. And some people are lucky enough where they just get a trained mind. The life that they live leads them to have a trained mind. A lot of college kids will get this. You know what I mean? People that are good in school, they end up having a really well-developed mind. People that play chess, people that do music, sports athletes, they get a really well-developed mind, right? But most of us, we don't get one, and then we end up, you know, working some corporate job and we're unhappy. And yeah, so my point is how you stay focused is with the intention of training your mind. So you have to have the humility to recognize that you're still learning. You have to have the patience to wait, right? The patience to understand that it's a process, right? And you have to have the love for yourself to be able to commit to something that is not easy. It's not easy to train your mind. It's probably one of the hardest things you'll ever do, because it really gets to the root of who you are. And almost every single time you approach this, you'll end up in some way breaking down and crying. For me, I found this like week 5 of basic training, and I found myself in a locker crying. So it's very real. Like, and the reason this happens is because what you realize is who you thought you were is not who you are in reality. And that's basically what it comes down to. When you cry, because a lot of times you mourn, you know, the loss of that idea, right? But most of the time it's because, shit, man, I lost a lot of fucking time thinking I was this way, when in reality I was a different way. And if I would have known that, then I could have, you know. And, you know, I think it's Jordan Harbinger who calls that the sunk cost fallacy. And basically, you know, you only know what you know, and you have to have faith that when you learn something is the time when you were supposed to learn it. And so I try to tell myself that every day. And, you know, I do believe in synchronicity. I believe that everything happens for a reason because I create the reason that thing happened for. You know what I mean? So people are meaning-making machines, and I happen to decide that things are things happen for positive reasons. And then I find positive reasons and I allocate those things. So life is a choice. It's a game of perspective. And how you stay focused is by staying focused on your internal life, making sure that you're as clear as possible, right? That so that you're seeing things as clearly as possible, making sure that, as Lao Tzu would say, that making sure that your mud settles before you stir yourself. Understanding that there is a clear picture that you can see. You know what I mean? That when your mind gets fuzzy, you don't have to necessarily do something. You can just sit there and let it clear up a little bit. That's how you stay focused when things start getting hard. It seems kind of strange, but it's very true. And I've been doing these, I've been focusing for a long time. So, and I don't just take my word for it. You know what I mean? These type of things, you know, you can listen to it and you can hear it talked about, but it's a lot different when you start practicing it. And so I recommend that if you're listening, just take 5 minutes, take some deep breaths, really just listen. You know what I mean? Close your eyes and just try to deep breath without your body shaking. Try to breathe as deep as you can without your body shaking. See how long it takes you for your body to stop shaking. Like, for some people it might be like, whoa, that's crazy. Why would you say that? Just try it. Because I guarantee you, especially during this time, everybody has so much stress and anxiety that they don't realize they're in a constant state of fear and anxiety. So just take that time, give it to yourself, give it to the people you love, and just take some deep breaths. So with that being said, I will be back with another episode fairly soon. Tune in, share this with your friends, like, subscribe it. If you're watching on YouTube, comment below. And actually, if you're listening to this and you want to be on the next episode, just comment below, put a comment down, put it in the review, send me an email, riley@rileyseberg.com. Yeah, I want to make this a real thing. So reach out. All right, guys, I'll be back soon. Bye.